Hello everyone, and welcome to my online talk, which will be part of the 2021 monthly series. My name is Leanne Azzopardi. Today I'm going to tell you a little about myself first, talk about my memoir and the inspiration for writing and other background information on the main topic of the book. Go and get yourself a cup of tea and sit back. Well, I'm a new author from St Albans, which, if you're not sure of, is in the western suburbs of Melbourne. I can't tell you how delighted and honoured I am to be part of the Brimbank Library Author Talks in 2021. We can't meet face to face for now because of COVID, but hopefully in the near future we can gather for talks and presentations once again. I was fortunate enough to publish my own memoir in December 2019, and it is called My Gay Husband. Here's a copy of it right here. The title may give away the story, but who knows? My book was published through Siddhartha Publishers, whom I am very grateful for taking the time to read my draft and consider my book, especially being a new writer. It's not always easy. The timing of publication didn't work out quite perfectly around the end of 2019 or beginning of 2020, and having to consequently cancel my book launch, which was supposed to be in April 2020. But it's still very exciting talking to you all virtually here today, and I thank you for being part of it and allowing me to share my story with you. I would firstly like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that we have gathered on, the Wurundjeri people. I pay my respects to the elders, past, present and emerging, for they hold the memories, the traditions, the culture and hopes of Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Island people across the nation. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a learning support officer who has worked as both a maths teacher and a tutor of maths and English for quite a number of years. I've lost count how many really. I also like to go to the gym and bushwalking on the weekends. I have 2 beautiful cats and I'm a mother of 3 young adults. In 2013, that's when I started writing down my mother's history. Mum was in her 80s at the time, and we thought it would be a good chance to write down her story before it was too late. I talked to her about her childhood stories and finished it shortly before she passed away at the age of 85 years old. The stories, as I put them together in a booklet, became a little gift for my 8 brothers and sisters, and it sparked my interest in writing non-fiction. As I said before, I have been a maths teacher and tutor for quite some time. I didn't really set out to write at all, let alone publish a book of my own story, which is not really an autobiography about my whole entire life, but a memoir of what you would say, a momentous and life-changing stage in my life when I was pretty close to 50. I was not one of those people who said, one day I'm going to write a book, and good on you if you do. I thought that it might be great to discover a new formula or an element or something along those lines. You may wonder what precipitated the writing of this book, a recollection of a time in my life in 2016 to around 2018 that prompted me to put pen to paper. It would be this writing process that would help me with my life challenges and would incidentally help others to feel that they're not alone on this roller coaster to recovery. And that's what it felt like at the time after going through this, that I needed a way to recover from what I'd been through and many others had been through. Now, my gay husband stemmed from a pile of notes written in exercise books, scrap paper, stick-it notes, and even notes on my mobile phone at times when I was sort of out and about and there was no paper. I would jot down my spontaneous thoughts, and at the time they were quite raw and real, and after looking back at them, I thought, wow, is that really how I thought at the time? But yes, it was. So writing each day became my cathartic tool for relieving a mass of inner turmoil and stress and helping me to let go of negative thoughts that were in my head constantly. And in order to be able to sleep at night, I needed to get rid of those thoughts by writing them down. So writing is good for many reasons. My gay husband was motivated by the discovery that my husband of 21 years and father of our 3 adult children was gay. He came out to me in quite a long letter that was the beginning of a real life change for Julian, myself, and our family. Now, this letter changed my life. To say I was shocked would be an understatement. I think the best way to explain how I was feeling is to read a little bit of the book to describe the night that I found out that my husband had been hiding this secret for over 20 years. So I'll just have a look. Page 6, I think. Okay. I carefully and painstakingly read the first 2 lengthy paragraphs which expressed his love for the kids and myself. He also wrote something about being sorry for his distance lately and that he'd been very depressed over a long period of time and forever pondering over how he was going to speak to me about this. I kept reading, line after line, as my head started to hurt and a lump formed in my throat, freezing as my eyes were fixated on the same 3 words. I am gay, I am gay, I am gay. No, it could not be possible. Not at all possible. I must have read it wrong. It seemed like an eternity before I could read every single page, word by word, syllable by syllable, trying anxiously to decide whether this was an insensitive joke, a cryptic message, or my worst nightmare. Everything seemed to be in slow motion. I had this mysterious letter in my hands, with Julian crying next to me, and it was as though time had stopped. So that was pretty much the first time that I'd found out by reading this letter. And no, I didn't have any suspicions. Maybe there were signs that I ignored, but I didn't really expect to receive this letter. Now, looking back on studies of what they say of mixed orientation marriages, and that's where one person's heterosexual and the other one is not, being maybe gay or bisexual. Well, these studies were conducted at Deakin University, and it was found that 50% of those surveyed thought they were gay before they entered into their mixed orientation marriage, but married anyway. And 85% of those in the study identified as gay after their mixed orientation marriage. So only 15% of them still believed that, they could stay within the marriage. An interesting finding of this study, I thought, was the two most common reasons cited for marrying when the person knew they were gay was that it seemed natural, it was the right thing to do, and that they really wanted children and a family life. Well, the two things that stood out to me was that both those reasons were to either please society, please their family, or the person who was not being true to their sexual orientation was getting something out of it. The impact on what they call it, the straight spouse, is often devastating. One moment you're in a relationship, happy or not, and you believe that you will be in that relationship forever. And then in a flash, everything that you've worked hard for is just taken from you. Emotionally, the straight person feels a mixture of sadness, anger, grief, and even very fearful for what the future holds. It's difficult for their family and well-meaning friends to understand the trauma and the challenges, even though it's amazing to have these people around. Nobody can truly get it unless you've been through it yourself. There are similarities to other types of separation and divorce, like heartbreak, loneliness, adjustments to your life, dealing with the children and finances. But there's a whole other layer of grief that forces you to question your self-worth. Like who was that person that I married, and why did they marry? Did they ever love me? All of those things. Many of us face this element of what they call gaslighting, where our partner covers up the truth because they're quite fearful that others will find out, and they make the partner feel that they were the problem in the marriage. Myself and others have said things like, we've heard from our partners that we're not pretty enough, we're not smart enough, sometimes we're not nice enough. Whatever it is will never be enough to make them love us in the same way as if they were heterosexual. Then there are other issues like identity crisis, belief system, shock, confusion, and self-loathing that result from after finding out. And in some cases, other people have had to be checked for STDs. Now, long-term therapy in the form of psychologists and counsellors is more often than not necessary to deal with issues such as sexual rejection, damaged self-esteem, and concerns about the children, trust issues, and resulting anxiety. The list goes on. A small, very small percentage of couples choose to stay together in their marriage after finding out, but the majority reach a point, just like I did, where they know that the only way to live happily is to separate. Now, there is the other side of this, and I recognise that. For many years, gay, lesbian and bisexual people have had to deny or ignore their same gender attractions. But in time, these feelings can no longer be expressed. It's still seen by many countries as unnatural to love someone of the same sex in an intimate way, and there are not many other options to be both gay and to start a family of their own. The shame, pressure, and dishonour prohibited gay men and women from being true to their sexuality. I was once equally judgmental because of how I was brought up in the 70s and the 80s, just as many of us were brought up back then. When I grew up, it was unheard of for two people that were gay to marry, with many people asking, what's the point if they can't have children? Of course, that's not a good reason, but that's what people said. It would be only a year after Julian's coming out that gay marriage finally became legal in 2017 in Australia. And of course, I voted yes in the plebiscite. Yes, for him and others who could openly love who they choose. And yes, because I did not want other families going through the same breakup as our family did. Marriage equality is important, but there is still work to be done to make sure that the rights of the LGBTI community are respected. It's so important that everyone is treated equally and fairly under all laws. Bullying and discrimination against LGBTI people causes really high rates of mental illness, self-harm and suicide, particularly for young people in our schools. Now, schools are now working very hard with their community to reduce and hopefully eliminate the stigma, prejudice and abuse of anyone who is perceived as different to the norm. I'm really glad that Australia has established programs like the Rainbow Network to discuss issues that may transpire when working with young people, their families, schools and community agencies, and for acting as an advocate for young people who once didn't have a voice or a choice. Now, Julian didn't have those rights back in the 80s when he discovered that he was gay as a teenager. It took him until the age of 47 to admit this to himself, myself, and his siblings. He pushed this part of him to the background, praying every day that he could change. When Julian came out, there were significant implications for all of us, including our children. My world was crumbling before my eyes, triggering me to delve into my subconscious and recall my childhood, living with an abusive father. My trust in men was destroyed all over again. My children had mixed reactions. A lot of people ask, how are the children coping? Well, at the time, of course, they were shocked. And they were mainly stressed that their parents would break up and that they would have to choose who they'd live with. They had to witness arguments like they'd never seen before between the two of us. And all of this along with their normal daily struggles of school and work. I'll read a little bit more about my book here to look at some reactions. Now I'll read a little bit about after reading the letter. Julian and I stayed up the whole night talking, crying and holding each other tighter than we ever had before. I could not remember the last time we embraced so lovingly. Fortunately, we were on school holidays since there was no sleep for either of us that hot January night. My initial thought was that Julian wanted to end the marriage, and I was in no way prepared for any of this. But in his well-written letter, he wrote, I hope we can continue our marriage journey, albeit a different one. Whatever that meant, I was not sure. He expressed his undying love and care for me, stating the decision would be up to me whether we stayed together or not. A tsunami of emotions fell upon me all at once: shock, surprise, confusion, betrayal and pain. So much pain, endless pain, that no amount of paracetamol could heal. I needed time to comprehend what it meant, time to read the letter over and over. I needed answers to examine the last 20 years in detail and determine what was real, what was a facade, and who this stranger really was lying next to me in bed. Yes, the marriage wasn't perfect, but I never guessed that he was gay. I believed he may have been on the spectrum and just ignored the subtle signs throughout those 20 plus years. I had no intention of writing the book without Julian's permission, and he gave that wholeheartedly. It was not a blame and shame book, but rather my own experiences. I don't blame Julian or anyone else except for society's unfair expectations at the time. My aim was to inspire hope to anyone who underwent this kind of pain in their relationships or other parts of their life. I believe it's never too late to rebuild the life that you always wanted, even if it's slightly different to your original hopes and dreams. Time, faith, and surrounding myself with positive people were some factors that assisted me with my grief. Many people have came along and said, "Wow, you're strong," which is lovely, but I didn't see myself as strong at the time, but I've always seen myself as stubborn and a determined individual, and this has been the driving force to move forward when it felt like life was just continually knocking me down. My advice to others in a support group that I'm part of is to treat yourself as you would your best friend. It's simple, but it's crucial. It's a roller coaster ride with many ups and downs and what feels like a very long road to feeling content with your life once again. But with the right support, it truly is possible. Now, at the moment, Julie and I have been divorced for about 4 years now. We're on excellent terms and parenting our kids, adult kids, in the best way that we can. I've moved on with another partner, and Julian has yet to find his soulmate. I know that everyone's circumstances are different. It's not always possible to be as amicable with your ex, especially if there was abuse or deceit. Our friendship was certainly not immediate, but it did eventually, we formed a really fantastic friendship. My book describes my story, anguish, and road to recovery, and discovering a new life after divorce. I truly hope that there's something that can help readers, even if their circumstances are different. I thought of writing on a follow-on book, as I still had further lessons to learn, and I'm still learning, and my life is a billion times better now. Instead, I offer to support to individuals who ask for my help on the Straight Spouse Network and anyone who drops me a message. If you would like to follow my book, you can borrow from the Brimbank Libraries or follow me on Amazon, social media, or Leanne Azzopardi at Azzo Books. For those of you who have ever wanted to write, I highly recommend that you do, whether it's poetry, creative writing, fiction, or non-fiction. Just start with a pen and paper, or type if you prefer. I'm old school and like to write with pen and paper, where I can pour out my thoughts, ideas, or whether they make sense or not at the time. You've got nothing to lose by writing and everything to gain by sharing your stories and your creativity. Before publishing my book, I enrolled in a short creative writing course at RMIT. I met some wonderful fellow writers. We shared ideas and basically learnt how to start writing and editing. It's great to get feedback from other emerging writers. I remember being told to not hold back and write what makes you blush. This way you can paint the picture that you want others to see in your story. And there's a story within all of us. Well, thanks for listening today. I'm really grateful, and I thank Brimbank Libraries for including my book here today. All the best, everyone, with your reading, writing, and enjoyment of all things. Bye for now.